Fellow citizens, on Friday, the 27th of May, 2022, Wendy Phipps, who is one of a handful of officials in the illegal cabinet of St. Kitts and Nevis, spoke to the media and deliberately lied and misrepresented the current situation at the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority, SCASPA. She also used the occasion to cast aspersions against the hard-working private citizens who gave their time and expertise to serve on the board of directors and attempted to malign the professional reputation of senior management of SCASPA. Her attack on the integrity was uncalled for and misguided. Since her address, many have questioned her motives and have expressed shock and horror that someone whom they thought possessed the right morals and ethics allowed herself to be used by her boss, Dr. Timothy Harris, to spread innuendos and boldly lie to the nation and the country at large. Ms. Phipps used the state media ZIZ and social media to mislead citizens, giving the impression that something was wrong at SCASPA, even though she is aware that the Port Authority is emerging from the many challenges of COVID-19 into a stronger position. Ms. Phipps looked into the lenses of the television cameras and into the eyes of Kittitians and Nevisians, and without regard for her own integrity, she lied over and over again, even though she has the true facts about SCASPA. Therefore, as the former minister responsible for SCASPA, I have taken on the duty to present the true facts to the public and to expose the lies that were peddled. Here is the true picture. Firstly, let's look at SCASPA's financial performance. For the first 4 months of 2022, that is, the period of the 1st January to the 30th of April, the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority, SCASPA, recorded a profit. Yes, SCASPA was in the black at the end of April this year. For this first quarter, SCASPA's profit was $423,933. This is quite a remarkable achievement for an entity that was so badly bruised by consistent losses over the last 2 years due to the COVID-19. These are not my personal opinions. These are the facts that can be verified, and Ms. Phipps should have known better, and in fact she did know better, but instead she preferred to lie to the nation. Now let us look back for a moment on the tough years of 2020 and 2021 during the height of the COVID-19. These 2 years when companies across St. Kitts and Nevis were closing their doors left, right and center. Employees in the private sector were losing their jobs and thousands more were made redundant. COVID-19 was ravishing the world with millions of infections and hundreds of thousands of people were dying. Here in St. Kitts and Nevis, our nation was terrified about the increases in COVID-19 cases. And in 2021, the death toll started. During that period, SCASPA, just like this federal government and private companies, had to find ways to mitigate the financial challenges that resulted from the closure of our air and our seaports. Despite these difficult times, not 1 cent was given to SCASPA from the federal government to cover its monthly operating expenses. SCASPA had to fend for itself through prudent cash flow management. You would recall that it was the whole country that was on lockdown. Cruise vessels were forced to cancel their calls and airlines stopped flying, not only affecting St. Kitts and Nevis, but the entire world. Let us keep in mind that SCASPA makes a large block of its money from the visit of cruise ships. For example, for the period January to April this year, the cruise sector provided the authority with 43% of its revenue. How, therefore, can Ms. Phipps, a former executive director of the Chamber of Commerce and someone who should have a sharper understanding of business, how could she allow her boss to send her before the microphones to mislead the public? Ms. Phipps, for example, is aware that in 2019, just before the global pandemic, SCASPA recorded revenues of 60.2 million EC dollars. Its expenditure that year was $59.2 million. Therefore, in 2019, SCASPA made a profit. However, in 2020, the first year of the COVID-19, the revenues dropped by $28 million to $32 million. And why did they drop? Because no ships were coming and no planes were coming, and syndicates and navies was closed. We were on lockdown. Then in 2021, the second year of the COVID-19, revenues dropped further to $26.3 million. But in addition, the expenses also fell by approximately 13% compared to 2020 to $51.3 million due to the cost-cutting measures that were implemented. For further clarity, cruise passengers arrivals fell from a high in 2019 of 1,045,842 passengers to 263,426 passengers in 2020, and then 101,845 in 2021. When ships and planes are coming, SCASPA makes money. And when they are cancelled, like during a pandemic, it affects the revenue stream. Despite the tough consequences of the pandemic, SCASPA kept its workers employed so that they could provide for their families. Staff allowances were reduced or discounted, and management and board took a 10% pay cut. All this sacrifice was being done by SCASPA at a time when private companies were permanently closing down and hundreds of people were being made redundant. The port employees remained on the job, exposing themselves to the possibility of being infected by the virus, and some got infected. These hard-working employees sacrificed their lives so that the cargo ships can safely arrive with food and essential supplies to provide for all our citizens. This is something Ms. Phipps should applaud SCASPA for, not launch attacks that are not consistent with the truth. I am calling on Ms. Phipps to soberly reflect on her recent actions and to apologize to the staff and to management and the directors of SCASPA for her unwarranted political attack. Apologize and let the people know that what SCASPA achieved in the first quarter of 2022 was a financial miracle and indeed a financial success. Let the public know the truth, which is that SCASPA was able to rise out of the COVID-19 fallout and produce a surplus up to April this year, just 33 days ago. With this background that I have just shared, how could she have lied, giving the impression that SCASPA was in such trouble that the federal government had to bail it out? Nothing could be further from the truth. Further, on the heels of her malicious attack on SCASPA, there was a document circulating alleging that SCASPA owes Skelec in excess of $10 million, and the perception is that SCASPA is largely responsible for Skelec's poor financial situation. SCASPA's annual electricity bill is just over $1 million annually. It means, therefore, that SCASPA would not have paid Skelec since it became a corporation some 10 years ago. This is far from the truth. SCASPA has been paying Skelec consistently since its establishment, except for the 2 years of the pandemic. The amount due to Skelec, based on a payment plan that I was privy to, is just over $2 million, which SCASPA services monthly. The $10 million that is being paraded relates to disputed billings of more than 20 years ago and includes amounts coming forward from the days of the airport being a government department. The original amount was over some 20 million, and following a review of the records that was available to SCASPA at the time, a pattern of excessive erroneous billings was demonstrated to the then electricity department, and $10.7 million was removed from the statements over the years 2009 to 2012. The notes can be found in the audited accounts for those years. The balance that is being circulating was submitted to the Ministry of Finance for resolution, and as far as SCASPA is concerned, it has no bearing on Skelec's current financial situation. Let us look at the government subvention of $17.2 million. Another matter raised by Ms. Phipps relates to the subvention of $17.2 million from the federal government. This money was not provided because the port was badly managed in 2020 or 2021. No, this money was to help pay for the chronic missteps of her friend and present colleague. Ms. Phipps is fully aware that the cabinet approved the subvention to cover 3 main items. So here is the breakdown of the $17,287,767, and every dollar was accounted for. 1. $6,974,287 went to the arbitration in connection with the construction of the second cruise pier under the guidance of former Minister of Ports Ian Patches Liebert. 2. $3 million went into the retrofitting of the Robert Batcher International Airport. The amount for the airport was to ensure that it complied with COVID-19 requirements that were put in place by the Ministry of Health and the COVID-19 Task Force. I should remind you that at that time the Minister of Health was Wendy Phipps. 3. $6,513,480 was allocated for fenders and dredging at the cargo and cruise piers to correct issues that originated during the tenure of former Minister Liebert. 4. The remaining $800,000 was a partial contribution towards the payment of the double salary for staff after the last-minute announcement by the Minister of Finance and outgoing Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris. It is also important to note that through the mishandling of SCASPA by the former minister, SCASPA had to pay over 15 million EC dollars in costs associated with the legal entanglements of the second cruise pier. These costs include, but are not limited to, arbitration legal fees, arbitration engineering fees, and corrective dredge work. The $17.2 million was approved by the Ministry of Finance and Cabinet and allocated for the 3 specific purposes only. Even though Ms. Phipps knew these facts, she misled the country by suggesting that the money was given because SCASPA was illiquid or unable to cover its ordinary operating monthly expenditure. It seems, therefore, that Ms. Phipps revoked the appointments of the recent board members for the correction of mistakes of her friend and colleague and the former Minister of Ports. What an injustice. Her motives had nothing to do with SCASPA. Her actions were purely politically motivated. The final 3 points I wish to touch on are related to her claims of conflict of interest, the employment of new staff, and an audit. Once again, her claims have no merit. Here are the facts. On her claims of conflict of interest, she offered no specifics. And the reason she offered no specifics is that the recent board did not facilitate any new contracts or businesses that represented a conflict. Thus, unless she makes a specific charge, there isn't anything to say on that particular matter. It was claimed that 67 newly hired persons were being paid significantly more than other employees. What she did not say is that the average salary for these persons is EC $2,487 per month. This is what Ms. Phipps calls exorbitant. Ms. Phipps must also be aware that of the 67 new hires, 27 were for security. These hires were as a result of the recommendations from security management to be compliant with international standards and was part of a comprehensive plan to revitalize the security department. In fact, TSA conducted an audit in April of 2022, and I am proud to say that during the brief in which the then Minister of Civil Aviation, Mark Brantley, was present, TSA commended SCASPA and the government for the marked improvement in the quantity and quality of security staff at the airport, as this was a major deficiency identified during the previous audit. What Wendy Phipps should have explained is that unlike in previous years, and as part of the revamping of the security department, all new security officers are now required to have a minimum of 4 CXC subject passes, including English, and must undergo and pass the maritime security, aviation security, and port constabulary training programs before they are confirmed as employees. These are the officers who have been given a slightly higher salary compared to others without the 4 subjects and all the requisite training. Therefore, $2,500 per month does not create a national emergency on the payroll. The plan of SCASPA is to have the existing officers trained and brought up to the required standards and pay scale within a 6-month period. Come on, Ms. Phipps. How could new security officers getting less than $2,500 per month be too much? Also included in that 67 number are 13 support operation officers. These officers were on staff as temporary workers during the December 2021 busy period and stayed on past 3 months to augment the pre-clearance procedure that was instituted by the Customs Department. Those officers were made permanent to support this process and included on the list of new hires in 2022. 4 officers were attached to Air Traffic Services Division, as this area was and still is inadequately staffed based on international requirements. 2 Marine pilots hired to replace the 2 that were separated from the authority late 2021. A chief mechanic, as the existing officer, has reached retirement, and the remainder was custodial, cleaning staff and customer service ambassadors for the airport. These 67 new hires are from the length and breadth of St. Kitts, every village, every town. She also stated that SCASPA would be subject to an audit as if to suggest that gross mismanagement of the financial resources of the organization. I wish to let the public know that SCASPA's books are audited yearly by external auditors. All audited reports up to 2020 can be found on SCASPA's website, and the 2021 accounts are currently being audited by independent external auditors. As I conclude, let me say that I was and remain alarmed that the government official could have used prime time and state media to embarrass the former board members and carry out a political hatchet job on behalf of her boss and close friend. Many have asked, how could Wendy Phipps allow herself to be an agent of deceit for our outgoing Prime Minister? She did all this even though she knew that she was pocketing $27,000 to serve on the COVID-19 task force, even though she was already being paid by the government over $13,000 per month as a Minister of Government and received her December double salary. This is the same Wendy Phipps who thinks that $2,500 is an exorbitant rate of pay for security workers with 4 subjects and who underwent and passed the required training. Also noteworthy is that Wendy Phipps revoked the appointment of 4 board members, and subsequently 3 others have resigned. My fellow citizens, these are the facts. This is the true picture as it relates to SCASPA. Thank you.